Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I feel like that it wasn't that long ago that we did appraisals and managing staff, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But today's webinar brought to you by Krona is all about managing staff performance and appraisals. And that's what I'm about to talk about. Hello and good afternoon, everybody. We've had some fantastic news, haven't we, throughout the UK, and I know people listening. I know Paul's telling me that his son did fantastically well. So sixth form ahead, I think. So congratulations, Paul. I hope you had a great bank holiday. I keep thinking that it's the wrong day of the week. So I can't get used to it as bank holiday, although I loved it. But I just need to share with you, it was my dad's surprise 85th birthday this weekend. It was my daughter's 21st birthday. My eldest daughter, who's 34, has tried to pass a driving test, 13 times, okay? And well, 12 times. And on the 13th time, she actually passed on my daughter's 21st birthday. I think that made me cry more than my daughter's 21st or my dad's 85th. But anyway, and then, there's just so much that's gone on in this bank holiday weekend. It's been fantastic. So I hope yours has been as good as mine. And anyway, today, we're talking about managing staff performance and appraisals. My name's Amanda Chadwick, and I think probably every one of you know me by now by hosting these webinars. But I am a speaker, a writer, expert in HR employment law. I've worked for the group for 25 years, and I've been in this industry for over 30. I'm very tired, actually, of representing tribunal. That's why I don't do it anymore. It's very, very stressful to do it, and I'm sure now the red tape is incredible. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But we're one-stop shop, as you know, for employment law to help you keep ahead of everything. I don't know why that's coming to tell you what our clients are, because you already know. I think most of you, well, actually, I don't know if you do. So today we will cover what can appraisals help, or how can help, what can appraisals help the business to achieve, when to conduct employee performance reviews, objectives of employee appraisals, SMART objectives, preparing for a staff appraisal, how to measure and monitor staff performance, employee performance appraisals, methods. What is an appraisal? Look at the list. Appraisal form examples, how to use your employee appraisal form, and employment law and appraisal forms. That's what we're going to talk about a lot today. That's a lot, isn't it? So anyway, I think what you're going to find with all this red tape and the government as it is, you're going to be doing, your managers need to be trained. They're going to be doing a lot of this, and you are going to be depending on them to get it right. Every aspect, return to work interviews, speaking to staff. And I always say, anyway, everything is a conversation. So let's talk about, first of all, managing staff performance. So here's the overview, really, of what an appraisal is. And it is your people, are your greatest asset. You know that. If you've got miserable member of staff, it shows, doesn't it? If you have somebody, I don't know what it is at the moment. I keep telling you, the customer service in a lot of places is horrendous. I went actually to or shall I tell you? I've just said it, haven't I? I went to a retailer the other day, and they double charged me for a very expensive item. And I had to go, and I was in a rush actually, but I had to go back in to get there. And when I went to the till where the person had served me, didn't even say sorry. I said, and I'm really pleasant, by the way, when I'm out and about, and I never do a review or anything, because I think sometimes you can have a bad day. But I went up to the till, I said, you've double charged me, for that item. And the man said, go to the back of the shop. They'll give you a refund. And I just turned around and said, sorry would be nice. That's all. Sorry would be nice. And I just think that customer service. So I think that your people are your best asset. They are, and I love them. They're fantastic. A lot of people dedicate years and years and years to companies and don't get recognized. And I think recognition, incentivizing, motivating your staff, they are your greatest asset. They'll make your business. Let me tell you, they'll break your business as well. And that's why you've got to get employment law right. But they are what make your business, profitable and successful. By extension, performance management is the key to your organization's success. The purpose of staff appraisals is to measure and improve the performance of your workforce. The desired result is to increase your employees' potential and value to the company. And employers are required by law to introduce appraisal scheme. They're not required, they're not required by law to have appraisal systems in place or schemes, but it is best practice. They can benefit both the employer, the employee, managers and getting to know your staff as well, and engaging in that conversation by improving job performance, by making it easier to identify strengths and weaknesses, and by determining suitability for development as well. And performance management isn't just about dealing with employees with poor performance. It's also about getting the best out of employees and identifying your top talent, succession planning. Everybody talks about succession planning, promoting and progression. And also for those people, that might be thinking about retiring, those people that might be thinking about leaving your company, performance appraisals are an assessment of employees' performance potential and development needs. So it is a way of evaluating staff to determine their value to your organization, but the outcome of this review provides the basis for promotions, pay increases, and other benefits as well. It's part of your wider performance management, and it really can influence processes such as redundancy and capability management. So that's quite important. So we need to be aware of what that is. So what can appraisals help the business to achieve? So what it does, it gets you to know your staff, doesn't it? Awareness and understanding of individual business objectives. Do you have a goal? That's it. Not everybody, by the way, has a goal. Not everybody wants to be the director or a manager. There are people within your company that have found the meaning of life, that are very happy plodding along, sitting in and slotting in. I was going to say that was a bit between slotting into the keyhole, are fitting in quite nicely with the company, that are very comfortable and very happy at what they do. They don't feel the need for progression, and they're very comfortable. And I know you've got people like that in your company, and that is fantastic, because they understand where they want to go, but still they need recognition. We don't want people to get stale or bored, but awareness and understanding of individual and business objectives and what's preventing achievement for some people. You'd also, I think, when you do appraisals, sometimes you do find out things about your company and your staff as well, and maybe things like micromanagement, bad machinery, things that need repairing. So what you're doing in this, when you have an appraisal, is agreement on expectations and how individuals' contribution fits into the organisation and how they see themselves as part of that. And I think that is absolutely essential to engagement, feeling like I'm part of the business. So in the future, if you want to change things, something happens, I'm more likely to accept that because you've engaged with me all along. And you've heard me use that phrase many times in webinars. It helps review development needs as well. And it is that future talent and mapping and planning as well. And obviously you have access to a formal appraisal process, but it allows your organization to understand, have an understanding, awareness of the individual businesses' objectives and the barriers preventing their achievement and development, and develop a knowledge. And I can think years ago I worked with TV channels, and people that used to sell TV channels as part of that in employment law and HR and incentives and motivation. Quite often I would go on, the board would meet up, I'd go into the board afterwards, they'd tell me what their objectives were for the company and what they wanted and where they saw themselves, and gave me the figures. And in HR and employment law, I would then look at the teams and then write incentive schemes to motivate them, but then there are certain things they needed retraining in as well. So if there's business objectives, there could be barriers preventing the achievement to achieve that, and it may be that they need upgrade, when I say upselling, retrained, refresher, or investing in training as well to meet those business objectives. So HR get involved in everything from health and safety to the board to managers to payroll, to social events. They get involved in absolutely everything, recruitment, everything. So ensuring a knowledge and awareness, but also develop a knowledge of of what is expected of individuals and agree with them, and how their contribution fits into the business as well and the organization. This helps an employee to know their place at work, and encourages them, I think, to see how their work contributes to the rest of the business, including its success. Now, appraisals, I think, are a fantastic way to spot hidden talent. Not everybody shouts the loudest, and finds way to nurture to the benefit of all. And I don't know if you know about this about sales. I've worked, having worked in this industry, but also in incentives and motivation as part of that, and feasibility studies and studying staff. Some of your best salespeople are the quietest people. People buy off people. And if you're talking about performance, you listen to me with reference to performance today, that I can think of the best salespeople that I've ever met, and I'm thinking about several companies here. Their top salesperson has always been a quiet individual, very softly spoken, not in your face. You wouldn't call them dynamic, but you listen to them. They're listeners, and they listen. They listen to you as well. They're listeners, but they're quiet, and they haven't got much to say. But what they say, I think is profound. People listen to it, and I think that we buy off people. We know that, don't we? So, and I think that you find the ways to nurture those people and those hidden talents. You might not think that quiet person is going to be your best salesperson, but they could be. And if you do those appraisals, you find out about people's personalities, and this can aid, can't it, and assist in succession planning and determining suitability for employees for promotion. So that's how appraisals can help the business to achieve what they want to achieve. And then employment law and appraisals. What does employment law have to say about appraisals? They don't say much, actually. You aren't legally required to keep a simple appraisal form in the UK. There's also no requirement to conduct a review annually or otherwise. So what is the purpose of them? So you might not encounter an issue until you dismiss an employee for performance issues. That's when I think that it will be raised in a tribunal, because without performance management or a chance to improve, the staff member could raise a claim of unfair dismissal. You will find it difficult to justify a dismissal for performance without any evidence or review or appraisal. So that's what the law says about it. There isn't much in law, but if you're in a tribunal and you're talking about performance or training issues, then they will quite likely bring that up. And also, obviously to me, I don't know if it's obvious to you, but the Employment Rights Bill is going to change that probationary period. You may rely on this a little bit more as well. So when to conduct an employee performance review? Although communication, with your staff should remain constant throughout the year, you should always schedule an official employment or employee performance review at regular intervals. I don't think people should dread going into them. This could be quarterly or yearly. We wouldn't recommend an official meeting more than frequently than once a quarter, because that's just wasting your time, I think. I think once, that's just too frequent. 2019 study found that nearly half of UK employees are indifferent to or dread their performance reviews. As a result, holding an appraisal more frequently could have a detrimental effect, I think, to productivity and morale. So if you have concerns or an issue you'd like to address, just have it in an informal meeting instead, and talk about it, and not wait till the annual or quarterly review, where people will dread it because you're going to talk about any issues you've had or bring up any issues. So what the objectives of an employee appraisal are defining the employee's role and responsibilities, because sometimes it can get washed out and people can, argue about it as well and say, that's not my job to do that. It is about defining the employee's roles and responsibilities. It is about identifying their strengths and their weaknesses. And it's a meeting between you and the employee to discuss their work performance, but it does provide you with the opportunity to understand their abilities for further development. But also the purpose of staff appraisals is to measure and improve the performance of your workforce. The desired result is to increase every employee's potential and value to the company. So, you go through that, identifying strengths and weaknesses, you're providing performance feedback to a staff member, you're determining compensation and pay packages as well, you're receiving feedback from the employee, and you're improving your communication. But that's what that is for. So we come to SMART objectives, and I'm sure you've heard about these. I think the word SMART is something that people talk about within the workplace. I think people forget what it means, and especially when it's abbreviated just to SMART. But it means specific. It means measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So if you're struggling to monitor your staff performance, try using this SMART objective method. And we have a lot of stuff for you to access when it comes to appraisals, feedback, difficult conversations, SMART objectives, and notes as well, and training. Now, objectives, I think, are key to management. And if you're uncertain about what objectives to set, start with the employee's job description. That's a really good starting point. This can help you identify what their key responsibilities and set the objectives that reflect the tasks they carry out. Remember, your objectives should be fair, though, and that doesn't mean they shouldn't be challenging just within the bounds of their role. Whatever method you choose, you must ensure that performance measurements you set don't discriminate against employees based on a protected characteristic. The most common examples of this happening, I think, really would be usually include disabled employees being put at a disadvantage. So let's have a look at SMART and what that means. So you can see on the screen specific. So what exactly does the employee need to do? Measurable is how will the manager and the employee know that it has been achieved? So how are we going to know that? Achievable, while it should be challenging, is it something the employee is reasonably capable of achieving? And relevant, does it relate to the needs of the team or department or business? And time bound, when does it need to be achieved by? So there's a date on that as well. An end to that, when does it need to be achieved by? So let's talk about preparing for a staff appraisal. So whilst most employers recognise the importance, not all of them know how to conduct appraisals with an employee. And many managers have never ever had training in them either. So the first step to conducting an appraisal is the planning. So, what you should be doing is planning for this, not going in there half-hearted, because that's absolutely pointless. Use this information to create an agenda that will help guide the direction of the meeting. And during the meeting, what you're going to do is you'll discuss their challenges and their successes as well within that period. And this part should include information on how an employee can improve their performance to reach those targets. So the first step to conduct an appraisal is planning. So data relating to the employee's performance, not just off the top of your head, but actual data. Notes from their previous review meetings, information on any future goals, objectives to set. And the main focus of the staff appraisal process should be on the future development of the staff member. It's important to come up with an action plan for how they can meet their individual targets, as well as contributing to the overall, company goals too. So when you're monitoring the staff performance, agree all the objectives with the employee, including the action points. And once you have your objectives in place, you can assess staff against their performance measurements. So, make sure you agree all objectives with the employee in the first place. This means they know and also they understand what is expected of them. And I think discussion is absolutely key here to performance management, because failure to communicate with an employee could result in issues going, undressed, I think. So this in turn can have a negative impact on morale and also retention too. So once you have your objectives in place, you can assess staff against their performance measurements. You can measure this simply by marking them as met or not met. That's what you would do. And you can utilize a scale system, for example, 1 to 5, if you like. Or if the measurements are based on figures, you can measure using metrics such as percentage increases. These types of metrics, sometimes known as key performance indicators, KPIs, can help you navigate business successes, make sure they're data driven and accurate before using them for performance management. Now, there isn't one way to go about this. You must choose which techniques work for your business and your people. Managing staff performance, I think, is delicate, and it is a delicate balancing act. So, on one hand, you risk micromanaging your employees. On the other, you have little direction and productivity drops. So you've got to get this even balance. And to ensure the balance, it doesn't tip too far either way, implement a personal development plan. So PDP, that's called. So, when we look at this, once you have your objectives in place, you can assess all staff against their performance measurements. So performance measurements, scale systems, for example, 1 to 5, metrics such as percentage increases, if key performance indicators or KPIs, and map out the progression I think you want to see in the employee from now until the next performance review. Highlight any training they may need, as well as issues or notes the employee themselves has. And this is where you get people lost, I think, in a conundrum, really, because they want a pay rise and you've put some performance measures in place, and then the staff change hands or a manager leaves and people forget about it, and that's where you'll lose great talent. So keep an eye on when your staff, your managers leave the company, or people that manage your staff in some way, supervisors, leave the company when they have been working with your staff on performance measurements and KPIs. So map out the progression you want to see in the employee from now until the next performance review. Highlight any training they may need, as well as issues or notes the employee themselves has. This will help them to feel invested in the business and their future within it. Another great method, I think, of managing performance is peer reviews. So this allows teams to provide positive and constructive feedback. And I'm thinking straight away of some people that don't like that, but it is a great method. Done well, it can be a massive boost to morale and brings teams closer. You should know any actions that come out of a peer review and follow them up. So that's sort of the tips on monitoring the staff performance. But then you've got the employee performance appraisal methods, and as I said, there are various methods with which organisations use to measure the performance of their employees. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses. So while one method might work for one organisation, it might not work for another, because personality, style, it's important to determine, I think, that the method that works for your business to evaluate your employee appraisals really works for you. And in their 1997 book, Managing Human Resources, George Strauss and Leonard Sales divide the methods into two categories. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Managing Human Resources, the 1997 book, but they talk about traditional methods and modern methods. And the traditional method rates an individual's personality traits. So this includes areas such as loyalty, judgment, knowledge, capacity, etc. And the modern method, however, develops on that. So these focus on the evaluation of job achievements. Might be worth getting that book, and having a look if you're interested in looking into it a little bit more, really. So the 1997 book, Managing Human Resources by George Strauss and Leonard Sales. So traditional performance appraisal methods include rating. So they list a number of factors and rate them on a numerical scale according to performance. And then we have the forced choice method, which is provide employees with ready-made statements about an employee that only they can answer, like a yes or no. And then a checklist method, which is list the employee's traits in the forms of statements with yes or no answers, and upon completion, send to HR or senior manager for evaluation. That's the traditional performance appraisal methods. So then we have, the essay evaluation is creating a detailed, and I am giving you an overview, because if I was to break this down and go on and on about it, I would be here like HR lecturer for like maybe assignments and days on end talking about each section of this. But essay evaluation, create a detailed description of an employee's performance, include details of their relationship with co-workers, strengths and weaknesses, etc. And we've got all of these tools available to you. Critical incidents method, so record it, critical behaviors of each employee in relation to performance, and take these results into consideration when evaluating performance or considering promotions or bonuses. And then confidential method, these are more common, I think, in government departments, where they evaluate employees based on various parameters, including attendance, leadership, self-expression, responsibility, integrity, etc. So, you see that more common in a governmental department, I think, than anywhere else. And I'm saying that you do see them in everyday businesses. The modern performance appraisal methods include management by objectives, work with employees to set goals and performance standards. You compare the goals achieved for the given period to the goals already originally agreed upon, take steps to improve employee performance and conduct reviews periodically. I think these methods are the ones that, I think newer employees are more familiar with. Assessment centre method, measure the organisational, interpersonal and planning ability of employees, and this helps determine the training and development needs of your staff. And behaviour anchored rating scales, so bars we call these, use a qualitative and quantitative data to rate employees. The process compares their performance with a similar numerical rated behavior. And again, I know to some people listening today, you can make this as complicated or as easy as you want, really, but we're at hand to help you make it the way you want to make it for your business. You can use, just a simple appraisal form, and the appraisal form is a tool you can use to assess employee performance. Having a company appraisal form will mean you can evaluate the contributions and also the achievements of your staff within a certain time frame. If your form is well structured, it will highlight career development opportunities as well as areas to improve. And what it will mean, it means that you can base promotions on results and plan staff advancement within your teams. And again, I highlight to you again the fact that we have, the appraisal forms that and everything for you, and can give you guidance on that and train. There's no legal time frame for when you should carry out an appraisal. As a result, you decide when you want to conduct them. A typical pattern is to conduct, as I said at the very beginning, yearly or quarterly. One reason it is to do a good idea to have a critical appraisal form to hand is the way that you can conduct reviews at critical points within an individual's employment. For example, at the end of their probation, and then do that appraisal then, or that critical point, and because it is a critical point to that person. Also, if you have concerns about an employee's performance, you then can refer back to that form and say at this critical point and this critical appraisal form, and you can refer back to that. And it is, I'm trying to get people into the habit of gathering evidence. So if you're not doing that, how can you say to somebody their performance was bad without the evidence of having had that conversation? So appraisal form examples are self-appraisal forms. So you can use this type of form on its own, or you can use it in conjunction with a regular appraisal form, but ask questions such as things like, what are your main accomplishments this year? So let me think what my main accomplishments this year are. Okay, so if I was having an appraisal now, and I do work for myself, but I work for the group, I've done for 25 years. My main accomplishments this year are, one, doing training at Blenheim Palace for all the staff there, which I'm doing in a couple of weeks. having 1,000 people at a CIPD conference, speaking at the CIPD, which I do anyway, holding many webinars. And I think so that you think about your accomplishments this year and think about which parts of your job do you do the best and which do you struggle with? So, think about that yourself. What parts of your job do you do best? And which do you struggle with? What do I struggle with? I struggle with admin. That's what I struggle with. I'm absolutely diabolical with admin. And the self-appraisal form gives you, the employee, you see, the opportunity to raise concerns and self-evaluate in doing so. And they may highlight issues you weren't even aware of, so that's what it does. So ask yourself that. I would think, and tap yourself on the back if you've had great accomplishments. That's actually at work. Home life's different. I'm talking about work here. But think about all your accomplishments and what you've done and what you've done best. Think about things you can struggle with, how you can do that better. And what parts of your job do you do best? So somebody might, like I've got, like I think I've told you, my time management is because I'm pulled from pillar to post. And I get swept away. If somebody needs some help, I always give my time. And this year I've actually gave myself an appraisal and thought, the reason I'm rubbish at time management is because I give everybody the time of day. So it's affected my time. So I've learned to say no. And it's come with backlash, actually, because I said it to my my son the other day. So his dad said to me, can you book this doctor's appointment? And I'm thinking, hello, you're like 29. Can't you book your own doctor's appointment now? And I actually said no. And the face was unbelievable. I just said, look, I'm not booking anybody's doctor's appointments anymore. You're all adults, aren't you? And I'm trying to run a business. I'm trying to work. I'm trying to read and research. And so this time I'm saying no. So this is something that comes from doing appraisal. So even if you are sat there and you're the person that does the appraisals, do your own appraisal too. And, try and improve yourself. So what part, those questions I've just asked you, think about that yourself. What are your main accomplishments this year? What part, which parts of the job do you do best? Which do you struggle with? And take a leaf out of somebody else's book that does, really great time management. The self-appraisal form gives the employee the opportunity to raise concerns, self-evaluate, and in doing so, they highlight issues you weren't even aware of. They also highlight issues themselves, and it becomes clear to them. Because if they're saying it is for me like time management, need to look at why that time management isn't great, and then look at what's causing that time management to be stretched. So that, and not, I meet deadlines, but sometimes skin of the teeth. So think about that, what's affecting that. And the same for you, so that gives them the opportunity to do that evaluation. Appraisal form for a potential promotion. In this document, what you're really looking for is applicability to a new role. As such, you should ask questions such as, will they need further training? Do they have the appropriate evidence? And remember, the appraisal itself isn't the decision, but an information gathering exercise. Ask all of the questions you feel are relevant to the senior role. Now, you should tailor your form to your business, and that means that no two businesses are the same, okay? And even if you're like a franchise, they're not the same. The people you employ are different. The way you run the business is different. The style of the manager is different. That means that no two appraisal forms look the same. And also other organizations may choose to use the forms in a different way. And that's what makes it, that's what makes it works for them, works for them. I don't know why I'm saying that, work for them. So how to use your employee appraisal form? Of course, having a form, like it is just one part of the appraisal, but we would advise conducting a meeting with the employee to discuss achievements, concerns, and future development. Together, it may be worth using a rating rubric. When you go home tonight, ask people, do they know what a rating rubric is? So a common rating system is the 5-point rating scale. So at the end of the review, what you're aiming to get is an average score, and the score may tell you whether they're suitable for future development. An appraisal should be a discussion too. I go on and on about that. I try and do HR in a very simple form, and I keep embedded into the listeners. That's you, and every other webinar I do, the real essentials to running a business and managing staff, which is engagement, which is conversation. It's about listening. It's about giving people the time of day. It's about getting the best out of people, because why the hell would you employ somebody if you're not trying to get the best out of them? And when you get the best out of somebody, then your business will thrive. And that is really crucial. So when I say an appraisal should be a discussion too, I mean that. And if the review is entirely one-sided, you may not get an accurate reflection of the individual's performance. So ask them questions and give them time to answer. Remember, I give you that technique where I say, ask the question, stop. So where do you think that you succeeded, or whatever? Or give me an example, then stop, and then I'll give you time to think. Have a think about that. So address their concerns if they have them, and build a plan to move forward. So what we've got here is that scoring system of poor. I know that it looks like a school report, but poor, fair, good, very good, excellent. I actually know I've got a school report, right, that says that they use this word, which is not allowed anymore, but they said, I'd love to see them now, but they said that they thought that I might have learning difficulties, that I was slow. That's the word they used in my school report. This was the 70s, by the way, the early 70s. They said that's what they said to my parents. And just because that I just was like probably socializing more than listening. This is as like an infant as well, like a junior school. So it makes you laugh, doesn't it, that he would say that years ago. So what not to do during appraisals is dwell on mistakes, get drawn into an argument, get defensive, that type of thing. I always think about what to drink when you're having a meeting, and an uncomfortable conversation, even difficult conversation, when you're going into an interview, whether you're going into I don't know, whatever conversation it is. I always think about what I drink. And I think that it's very important that people do, and take a leaf out of this really, because if you're having an important meeting today and it's one you're a bit worried about, I wouldn't drink coffee. I would drink something decaffeinated. In fact, what I drink is I'll have a hot water or a cold water, dependent, but usually actually hot water, like that's what that I would have, or a hot Vimto, which I find quite calming, and that's what I would have. And I think if you're going to have a meeting, and it's something, because not all managers are great and they don't like doing appraisals, they're going to talk about stuff. So I think for everybody is not encourage a Red Bull or an energy drink or a Coke, but to have something that is calming. And I just find that hot water is calming for me, or just plain water. Should always be positive, you see. No useful purpose when conducting a review to focus on any negatives. And I think it will look like you are ruthlessly criticizing the employee and making the employee dread it as an annual ordeal. I think it should be something that's really looked forward to. It's a time when you're giving them the time of day and recognizing them, so don't dwell on mistakes, get drawn into an argument. And what I do say to anybody I work with that's worked for me in a team, or worked, and we're working on something and I'm heading the team or whatever, I always say to somebody that I work with, if you ever make a mistake, the best thing you can do is just say and own up. Don't try to cover up, don't try to blame on somebody else. Just say, I've made a mistake, and I say this to my children, I say it to everybody, because then what happens is, what can I say? You've made a mistake. Where do we can move on then? We know there's a mistake. What is the damage limitation of that mistake? So, don't dwell on mistakes. Don't get drawn into an argument. Focus on the negatives. Treat it as a tick box exercise and not a means to achieve a quiet firing, which some employers do. So nothing, though, should be a surprise to them either. Concerns should be discussed as and when they arise, rather than saving them up for the review. And I straight away think about bad examples of that. I won't share them with you, but it just will scar that person for a long time if you don't hold it in the right way, and they will dread it, and it will have a knock-on effect going on. And I will tell you one, actually. I can think of a gentleman, really nice man, years and years ago, that was pulled into what he thought was an appraisal, and he'd bought a new suit for it. He'd brought evidence of what he'd been doing and evidence of, client reviews, etc. This was years ago, and by the way, it wasn't Corona, so just so you know. And he went in, and actually, I can remember I gave him a hug as he was going in, and I said, "Go on, show him. Like you're going to get. It's so sad, actually. It's horrible. And go and show them. All the work you've done. It's blooming fantastic. You'll get that pay rise. Come on, let's do it." Bought a new suit, new tie, everything. And when he got in there, what they did is they used it as an excuse to talk about his cigarette break. So let me give you a bit of history about this man. He didn't he didn't need to be in an industry, a job he had, he didn't need to be on the phone or anything like that. So he wasn't entering, any sort of service agreement, or he wasn't time constraints or anything like that. He worked at his own pace. He didn't take lunch breaks, and he just had probably, I don't know, 6 cigarette breaks a day. And that's what he did. Okay. And there's a reason why. His grown son had died of cancer, so he would use those breaks as a self-help health thing. Okay, no, it was unhealthy, by the way, and he knew that, but he would go, I'm not having a lunch, I'm just going to have continued cigarette breaks. But the manager at the time, I felt, okay, and as I said, this is decades ago, had it in for him. And I think that he'd printed off the times that he'd exited the building and the times he'd come back for that cigarette break, and he was all within. If you worked it out, the 2 breaks, one in the afternoon, one in the evening, in the morning, and his lunch, he was well within and under. By the way, this man used to stay late as well. And it was horrific. It was absolutely awful. It had been used instead of an appraisal to really, to like a disciplinary, really. And it was awful. And I felt so badly about it all those years ago, all those decades ago, that I actually put my hands up in the meeting and made a point of saying that this is not what it should have been, and it was absolutely horrific, and that I wasn't going to be a part of this. And it was very sad, because the person was going in there thinking they were showing them how brilliant they were and what they'd done and how well they'd worked, but it wasn't, and it was really horrible. And I wouldn't want any appraisal to be like that, but it's happened. It happens all the time in companies. It shouldn't be a surprise to an employee, and concerns should be discussed as and when they arise, rather than saving them up for the review. So if there is an issue with that, you should have mentioned it a long time ago and said, look, we understand that you're grieving, but we would ask that this is just a temporary measure, and that in the future, like everybody else, you should be having your lunch break and 2 breaks. That's what you should be doing, and we're very grateful for everything you're doing, etc. But we want to rein the breaks in and bring it back in. So you've got to get it right. That's the meaning to this, isn't it? It's not a means to achieve a firing. Get it right at the recruitment stage can help employers and avoid falling into the risky trend of quiet firing. This is where employers create workplace conditions so bad that the employees decide to leave. Given that this could result in claims of discrimination and constructive unfair dismissal, not to mention reputational issues, then for the business, this is a dicey trend for employers to adopt, and I would hope that nobody does. But if an employer finds that there are concerns or issues with their staff, correct capability or conduct processes should be followed accordingly. So, that's what not to do during appraisals. And I hope you don't mind me sharing that story with you. It was a long, long time ago, but, it stays with you, doesn't it? Things like that. It upset me ever such a lot, because I knew how this person had been waiting for that pay rise, what they'd gone through, and how hard they'd worked to just have it just killed in one go. And it's not very nice at all. So I hope you don't use that in that way. So appraisals are a really useful tool for employers to understand the skills and capabilities of their workforce. And they can be utilised not only to improve performance within the business, but also to reach specific business goals. If you have a process of regular appraisals, they keep your employees motivated and engaged, and they can also assist with talent mapping and that succession planning. There we go. Also keep an eye out for people that are leaving your company, retiring, moving on. You might have somebody you forgot that's going to uni, or is on break from uni or whatever, has had a year out or something. So have a think about that. Any questions on this? I hope you've found it interesting today. But any questions you have on this? And by the way, my dad, and it was 85, as I told you, at the weekend. He was 85, no, yesterday, but he had his party at the weekend, surprised, didn't have a clue. but his 95-year-old cousin was there. How about that, hey, for Jeans? I think that's brilliant. So I just want you to have a wonderful week this week. I hope this has helped you. Remember, it doesn't have to be as complicated as you want. It can make it as simple as you want when it comes to appraisals, but use our helping hand to support you. That's what we're there for, isn't it? If you have any questions, events@krona.co.uk and quote CGLW0278. And I am on my way to London in the hour. I'm taking my little granddaughter Primrose with me. She is going to be my podcast manager for the day. I'm actually I'm recording a podcast that you will have access to. So I'll let you know all about that. And I know that, can I tell you what the first episode is about? It's about leadership. So anyway, but don't tell anybody I told you that. Anyway, so I'm going down to London today to record that for tomorrow, and you'll see that in the next few weeks, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. I'll have guests and everything on there. So if you ever want to be a guest on it and you want a topic for me to talk about, let me know. I'm not telling you what the name is, but you will know in the future what it is, and I hope you thoroughly enjoy it. Thank you ever so much, everybody. You'll get the recording, you'll get the slides. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Maria, Carolyn, and Paul. I know Liz is listening as well. I know Sonia's listening. Sophie's listening. I know all the regulars that are listening. If I missed you out in any way, I don't mean to, but thank you very, very much indeed. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll speak to you next week. Okay, see you. Bye-bye.